Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for CEO Exclusive, brought to you by Anona Enterprises.
Good morning and welcome to CEO Exclusive, where we get emerging trends from CEOs and their most trusted advisors. I'm your host, Soyini Koch. So we haven't had anybody from the financial markets on in a while. And I know, money and what's happening with loans and what's happening in the financial markets is always of interest to CEOs, like whether or not you're going to be able to get that loan you want to go after. So I'm really delighted to have Neil Stevens, who is president and CEO of Oconee State Bank, and one of his longtime clients, Larry Campbell, who had a technology firm, is living the dream. He's sold the firm recently, and now he has a nonprofit that is Peachtree Corners. That's his life dream. So I'm delighted to have Larry on the show, and then we have Caleb Stevens, Larry's relationship manager, but also Neil's son. So it's I'm really delighted to have you all on the show this morning.
Thank you, Soyini. We're glad to be here.
So
Exciting.
Neil, start off by telling us what's happening with what are the trends you think our CEO listeners need to know?
Well, there's a lot of trends happening right now in banking. It's a lot different today than it was 10 years ago, for certain. We are glad to be out of that recessionary period, and we hope that never comes back again. That was a tough time for all banks. But today, I would say there is definitely money to lend, and businesses are borrowing money more so today than ever before. There's growth, there's activity, new customers. Many of our customers are having a hard time keeping up with demand, which when that occurs, obviously they need to borrow money for growth's sake. And so today's environment is a little different probably than several years ago, and that there's, banks need more information today because of the regulatory environment, because of everything that happened previously. Sometimes, small businesses get a little frustrated because banks ask for all sorts of information, but a lot of that they don't have any control over, but then it's just good, prudent business. But so the loan markets are probably a little tighter than they used to be in terms of credit and qualifications and those sorts of things. However, banks are lending, and the banks in Georgia, most all are now profitable and doing quite well and hiring people. And so it's a good time to borrow money, and there's a lot of competition out there as well. And so finding a bank who can provide excellent service at also competitive rates, I mean, that's what I would encourage the audience out there to listen for and look out for.
Now, Larry, you were building your business during the period that we were just talking about, the Great Recession. And now you've sold that, and you started or kind of continued and moved over into retired and moved into your nonprofit. What was that like, and how are you finding your access to capital now versus a few years ago when you were building the technology business?
Well, the difficulty during the tough market is that the banks needed a lot more information. So a lot more reporting, keeping up with details. I always believe that if you have a good business case, it can be funded, but you worked harder to get the bank to do that funding. Part of what I enjoy working with Neil is his team was good at listening. I think that's important in banking, that you listen to what the client's trying to do. And because we had good business cases, Neil was able to help us fund our growth during that time period. We ran a technology company for 25 years, and in 25 years, there's always going to be some up and downs. But the critical thing is knowing what you're doing and how you do it well and differentiate yourself from other competition.
And what's happening with regard to technology? I know that technology is changing banking a lot. And then I also wanted to ask if the the changes in Dodd-Frank are affecting you and other banks as well that you're seeing.
Yeah, to speak to Dodd-Frank, a lot of the Dodd-Frank rules really hit the bigger, larger banks much harder, particularly once you reach the level of 10 billion, and there's other regulatory matters that hit banks pretty hard when you get to that size. But it all bleeds down, and it has had an impact, particularly from the standpoint of the people we have to hire as a community bank. You have to be larger today as a community bank to be able to to be able to pay for the additional staff, essentially. We have 3 people in our compliance department, and Probably years ago, you'd only have to have maybe a half of one person, maybe part-time doing that. And so that and the capital requirements of banks today are now much higher. And so between having to carry more capital, having to hire more people, you have to become larger to be able to support that infrastructure from a Dodd-Frank perspective. And, I believe a lot of that is good, frankly. Some I think, bankers would say is a bit of an overkill, but a lot of it was needed. In terms of technology, that's the big buzzword today in banking because of all the fintech, financial technology companies that are out there. And many banks are either purchasing fintech companies or partnering with fintech companies to bring enhanced electronic banking services, mobile banking apps, and more sophistication to the table, pay to pay, person to person payments and those sorts of things. That's sort of where the trend is going. And so we use a firm called Jack Henry, which is a large core processing firm. And so they bring a lot of that technology to us as a community bank that we partner with them to provide our clients. But one of the things we also have to be cognizant of is within the technology, arena and world, internally, there is regulatory things that we have to watch very closely because, the protection of customers' information and data and a lot of those type of things. We have to have policies and procedures and rules around that. And then cybersecurity becomes a big issue and safety of all the information. And so, again, back to hiring of people, we have to have, beefed up technology areas and a lot more time spent there. So it's a balance between offering our clients what they want to have the ease of banking that we want them to have, but at the same time protecting the bank internally from a cybersecurity perspective. So,
and Larry, are any of these changes changing your relationship to, Oconee materially, or is the technology just ancillary to the relationship, have you found?
I still think it's about relationships. I think Neil does a great job in leading to make sure that it's people working with people. Technology comes all the time. It brings more detail, but detail can get in the way of relationships. So I think relationships has to be first, and I think Neil's team does a great job of that. Technology gives you better ability to make better decisions if you use it properly. Therefore, I think it's more of our friend than anything else. But some people are better with technology than others. So the critical thing is providing it in a manner that you can use what you feel comfortable with.
And so, Annie, we are asked a lot of times about, branches and banks and people, and will we get to the point where everything is just done electronically?
Yeah,
and,
there's going to be a robot behind the screen, the window at the bank.
We get that a lot. And I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer that will never happen because of what Larry just said. It's still about relationships. We had a panel recently at one of our team meetings where we had an older couple there, I think, and they're in their 70s, mid 70s. We had a middle-aged business owner, and then we had a millennial, a 26-year-old young man that was there. And it was interesting to hear the young man say, "I love my technology. I hardly ever go into the bank branch. However, I definitely want the opportunity and the ability to be able to pick the phone up, call someone, or either walk into a branch if I need them. I never want that to go away." And that just goes back to the fact that everything's about relationships, but the technology helps enhance and speed the process along. So,
speaking of, Larry, you've been a customer of Neil, not necessarily at Oconee, for a long time. So share with us, why you've chosen to kind of follow him. What is it? Yeah, people don't often have this great relationship with their banker. I just love my banker so much. So what is it that's had you, choose to basically maintain this banking relationship across companies and across so many years?
I think it's a great question. I think many people think of banking as a commodity. I don't think it's a commodity. I think it's a person-to-person view. Neil's team does a good job of being my partner. And you need that in banking because some days you don't make your forecast. Some days something will go wrong. And you want someone as your partner who's with you in that journey. Neil and I and his team shares information on a regular basis. We plan together. We figure things out together. And then we're consistently there. Over time, I must produce for my shareholders, for my stakeholders, for my teammates Neil knows that. So if I miss a forecast 1 month, I make it up the next month. So the consistency of his leadership, pulls through his team, allows us to do our job and to feel comfortable there's a partner with us day in and day out. That was not my experience with other banks. Part of why
other banks or other bankers?
Well, both bankers and banks, because sometimes decisions are made somewhere else. So you feel you have a great relationship, and then you get into a bad quarter, and the bank tells you we're probably going to drop our relationship. That's one of the difficult things in banking. If it becomes a commodity, then you really are just robotic. Neil's team understands our business model, and they're with us in good days and bad days. We do reporting, but we're really together in that process. And I think that's a critical part of banking that Neil brings that a lot of people don't get in banking.
All right, listeners, we're talking to Neil Stevens, CEO and president of Oconee State Bank, and one of his longtime clients, Larry Campbell, who is the executive director of Peachtree Corners.
Corners Outreach.
Oh, Corners Outreach.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh,
No
I
problem.
apologize. So take us through what it's like to, for CEOs listening, what it looks like when you have a bad quarter and you have to communicate that to your banker, and what it looks like when it goes well and what it looks like when it doesn't go well.
Well, part of the issue gets into, if you run a business, you will miss forecast. I mean, you want to say that you won't, but you truly will. And part of it's the process behind that. With Neil's team, we were able to go through how we got our numbers, and then when we missed a number, we could explain what happened. I think over time, there's a predictability that you can come back with, and there's a factor that lets you determine what adjustments you make. But the critical thing, there's thoroughness. Neil has thoroughness in his ability to lend. We have thoroughness in our ability to forecast and produce. The critical thing is having a partner that's not too short-term motivated. And that's part of the relationship side of going through it. Neil and I have been working together for over 10 years, maybe 15 years.
Right.
In different places. And I would say in that 15-year time period, our batting average has been very good, but any one particular month, we can be off. And that's part of the beauty of having someone that has the ability to look at a bad month as a bad month, but not change the relationship part of that.
And I think the thing too is when you have a client like Larry and Larry's company, they provide lots of information. So if you have a bad quarter, it's better when the client comes to you and sits down with you with his information and says, look, here's the deal. We're not going to have a good quarter, or we're not going to have a good year, but here's our plan. Here's what we're doing, and here's the forecast, and here's what it looks like. And, sometimes it's not necessarily always pretty, but when they're honest, that gives the banker a lot of comfort. And we like to say at Oconee State Bank, we like to winter and summer with our customers. So we're going through the good times with them, but then when things turn bad, and they will from time to time, we're not just going to kick you out the door and say, go find another bank. Particularly when they're communicating and doing their best to work with you, because the last thing the bank wants to do is to run a business out or foreclose or anything like that. That's the last resort. So the plan is to work something out, and over time, and that's the best solution for all.
Mm-hmm. So during this segment of the show, we love to talk about culture and relationships and how you're building a great business together, businesses together through the relationship. So share with us what you've done to create a great culture. That's, the buzzword and one of the things we love to talk about on CEO Exclusive. Yeah,
that's a real hot topic for me. I'm very passionate about culture. And I think of Oconee State Bank, and the bank has about a 60-year history. It's 58 years old, started in 1960 by a group of business people in Watkinsville, Georgia, and is still around today, survived, the ups and the downs. And the bank has always had a good culture. It's never been a toxic culture. During the tough years, there were probably some silos that formed and just some things that happened just because of the tough time they went through. And so one of my charges and one of the most exciting things that I get to bring to the bank is taking a good culture and really working towards building a remarkable culture. And the way we define that, we have a great culture to us is what we call our BEST initiative. And when this is in place, we feel like it's the culture that is a very positive, strong culture. And that stands for BEST, believing the best in each other, expecting the best from each other, seeking the best for each other and telling the best about each other. And so as a team, when we can do that, we feel like that'd be a great culture. And that's not easy to achieve. I mean, those things, it sounds easy to say, but when you have a group of people and you're trying to get them all in the same direction, it takes time and work and a lot of intentionality, but we're making great strides towards that. But that's the one thing that if I could take anything away, that would be the secret sauce of any company, it is a great culture. And I think a lot of companies talk about it, but very few really put the intentionality behind making that culture great.
So let's unpack this a little bit. So, culture is really great, and saying that you want a remarkable culture is also really good. Larry, can you give us an example, like a real live example of where this seems to have come alive for you, when he talks about having a remarkable culture? Because it's very easy to say, like Neil said. What does it look like in real life for you when you go to Oconee State Bank and this remarkable culture happens?
Well, I think it's attention to detail. I mean, I think we often talk about being customer service, but the real question is do we live that? It's not just a matter of talking. Neil's team does a good job, just not of talking, but of actually doing it, having empathy for the customer, thinking of how the customer's experience. As we've talked about, Neil and I have been through good days and bad days. Neil's consistency in the good day and bad day is remarkable to me, because that's not normal in a banking relationship. He sets the culture, the people follow the direction. I think we have to all be good at listening and then talking and making sure we're hearing what's going on. Empathy is a powerful word. If you have empathy for your clients, empathy for your team, empathy for the people in your environment, over time you learn, how do I help you make your life better? I ran a high-end technology consulting company, and we always ask, what can I do for you? Today I run a nonprofit, and we always ask, what can I do for you? Those are the same concepts that Neil follows in banking. So you might look at 3 different areas there and see that the key really is, do I really know what your needs are? And am I making today a better place for you? It's really simple, but the detail is the leadership causes you to follow the detail until it actually occurs.
And Caleb, so yeah, go ahead. You wanted to say something.
Yeah, I would just add, I'm Neil's son, by the way. If you're listening, you're like, where is this random voice coming from?
Yeah.
I am Neil's son. I would just add, I'm only 24. I've never been in, a lot of leadership positions, but I would just brag on them real quick because they're a little too humble to tell you. But one of my favorite quotes is by John Maxwell, and he says, people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. In other words, you could have the best plan, the best strategy, the best vision for where you want to go. But if the leaders aren't on board, if the leaders don't care about the team, if the leaders can't practice servant leadership, it's really hard to get on board. And I know for me, observing my dad live that out, observing Larry live that out, who Larry's my boss, both high men of in great integrity, great character. And so anytime I think you're looking to get involved with something that's bigger than yourself, look to the leader and not just the vision. You have to have both, but it starts with the leader because they need to be someone who's worth following.
What's your favorite example of an incident that happened that demonstrates that for you?
Yeah, so a mentor of mine, his name is David Salyers. He's the vice president of marketing for Chick-fil-A, and he always tells me this story, and I've never forgotten it. He graduated from the University of Georgia back in the 1980s. And when he was thinking about, well, what job should I get? I think he was a marketing major. And so he had all these offers from these different places. He had the highest paying offer in his entire class of the University of Georgia, but he also received the lowest paying offer. And he had a mentor bring him aside and he said, David, the last thing you need to be worried about when you graduate is how much money you're going to make. Find a leader that you can believe in. Find a company that you can be proud to work for, and find a role that you're good at and passionate about. And so that's what he did. 35 years later, that boss was true at Kathy in Chick-fil-A. And so I think right there is a testament to early on, look for the leader before you look for the vision, and great things can happen.
You wanted to say something? Go
Well,
ahead.
I just want to add that I thank you for that, Caleb. I do believe that's the case, but I also believe it's incumbent upon the leader to empower the team around himself or herself. And so, for instance, at Oconee State Bank, we have a very strong senior leadership team. And I feel like it's my job to put those people in the right roles and then make sure that their passion and talents and values all align, as Caleb mentioned, but then give them the autonomy to do their job and really do it well. The leader may set the tone, but the leader can't do it all by himself. The leader has to cast a vision, but the senior team and the rest of the company has to own that vision. And so when we came up with our vision, mission, and values, we changed those recently at Oconee State Bank. Not that they were bad before, they were very good, but we refreshed them and made them a little sharper. And it's really outward focused versus inward focused. But our team came up with that. It was, I helped lead the charge, but the team, they're the ones who actually helped create that. And so they believe it, they own it, and they're 100% behind it. And if you don't have that, if you just have the leader just, preaching from the soapbox, this is what we're doing, they'll follow you because they want to keep their job. But if you're really not as effective as you can be when they own that vision, mission, and those values.
I mean, one thing I would just say to that too is we help large companies set technology directions. Many people love vision and mission because it's kind of exciting. The critical to success is following it daily. So the best leaders and the best organizations connect their mission, vision to what they do every day. And when that happens, you actually live out your mission and vision. Until that happens, it's just on the wall. Looks very catchy. But the critical thing is living it out. That takes great leadership because you've got to connect all the worlds, all the possibilities, and then you've got to monitor and make corrective actions. The best teams understand the corrective actions are back to the same mission and vision that they've already created. That's almost the secret of success.
And I'll add one more thing to that as well, is that all companies, all for-profit companies are in business to make money. There's no question about that. I mean, it's like oxygen. We don't live without it. We have shareholders at the bank. We have investors. Every company has to get a return on their investment. That's why they're in business. But most companies stop with just the profit. There's not a purpose beyond the money. And we feel that if we can use the profitability as a platform to make a difference and mark the lives of other people, money or profitability will never be our issue. But it turns it back to other people. So we feel like that's the key.
One of my favorite questions about this, and you mentioned corrective action, Larry, is so what happens, Neil? You talk about best, right? And you have a teller who's really snarky, right?
Neil doesn't have anybody like that.
Niall doesn't have any. No. He doesn't have any snarky tellers. You know where I'm going, so go ahead.
Well, it takes time for people to buy in, and I think what typically happens is when the tide begins to turn, and you have those. The Ritz-Carlton happens to call it the jerk factor. That I've heard them talk about that 93%, they have a 93% satisfaction rate, and the 7% who aren't, 4% they can do something about. In other words, soap wasn't in the shower, or something was wrong that they can fix, and the customer is very happy. 3% of that 7 are just jerks, is what they say, that you'll never make happy. Fortunately, we don't have any of those jerks in the bank, but my point being is the fact that, there are some who just can't buy in. They don't buy in or don't agree with the direction you're going. And typically what happens, those individuals either, number one, they will eventually get on board because their team members around them, they begin to see the value and it pulls them up, or many times they will self-select. They'll say, this isn't for me. I don't feel comfortable here, and they'll go somewhere else. And then there's a rare occasion, as a Ritz-Carlton says, you just have to unleash people to the competition. And so, we don't like to do that. That's not our focus at Oconee State Bank, is to retain people and to keep a high retention rate and to give them every chance they can. But I guess there comes a place in time where you either got to sort of get on board, or you need to find somewhere else, because part of being the best and wanting the best for someone or seeking the best for someone is to help them find maybe their role where they can be, which may be another company or another industry. So,
and Larry, how do you deal with the the snark factor?
Well, I think it's a critical thing is to put yourself in the life of the client. If you look from the client backwards, it gives you better empathy for their situation. I also have learned over time, we've run very, very high-end, multi-million-dollar projects. I go back and survey the client on what do you most remember, and I'm thinking it's going to be some unique solution we came up with. And they'll come back and they'll talk about the day we brought cake and balloons in. And what you learn from that process is that it's continually looking at the little things that you must do well that creates the memories. The Power of Moments is a phenomenal book. It tells you a great deal about when you're creating those moments. We're trying to take a technology team that's the best in the world and make sure they don't forget that's the small things that actually add up and create the memories that cause clients to refer you to someone else or what they remember when they look back at our projects.
Let's see. Oh, well, I think we're out of time. I would love to continue. This is a great conversation. So share with us what's happening at your companies that you think our CEO listeners need to know.
Well, I know that we're very involved in an expansion mode and a growth mode. So we have recently expanded Oconee County, by the way, and the Watkinsville, Athens area will always be our home base. It will always be our roots. We want to enhance Oconee County and bring back jobs, bring back profits, bring back, help the economy there by expanding and growing. And so, but we have recently expanded our reach into Gwinnett County, and we may go other places as time goes on because you have to continue to grow as a company, particularly with all the different banks today that are coming into our market. You have to continue to grow if you want to survive and stay independent. And our goal is to not sell the bank. Our stockholders and our board are very adamant that we do not want to sell. Well, we have to continue to get a return for our shareholders in a major way to avoid that, and growth and expansion and those sorts of things is what's going to protect that, in the long term. So those are probably some of the things that our listeners need to know, is that we're not just in Oconee anymore, but we're in the Atlanta market.
Wonderful. And Larry?
One thing I would say,
Peachtree Corners, or Corners Outreach, sorry.
No, that's fine. One of the things I would say is a lot of our business folks feel like that they're so busy with business they can't give back to the community. We created Corners Outreach in 2012 while we're running a high-end technology company because we believe all of us should find time to serve in the community. Corners Outreach is a multi-generational approach where we're helping students in the poverty levels of Atlanta get better test scores. We've raised their test scores by over 50%. At the same time period, we recognize our parents are underemployed. So we're hiring parents into Corners Industries to raise the level of earnings for them. We're attacking poverty cycles on both sides. We're going back to people who've never graduated high school. We in business know that when you're in an inexperienced area, you bring an experienced team in. We're going inside our families and leading them back out of those situations because they have to graduate high school. We have to help them have better employment. We're giving them the opportunity to do things with their skills. We're building on their assets. So often in business, we ask you, what's your strength? And we build on your strength. We do the same things every day with our families. We have many families that are working very, very hard in landscaping. So last year, we launched a landscaping business. We hired parents into landscaping, building on their strengths. It's a much better question to ask, what can you do well, than it is to ask, what do you need? So often in business, we miss the opportunity to serve. So my encouragement to business leaders is, don't just be about business, be about making our community stronger. And you can do that with many partners like Corners Outreach, just by serving or giving a little bit of your time, becoming involved in our children. Our children are our future. They are our future workers. They're our future son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, and it's critical that we work to get to know them. We're blessed in Atlanta to have a very diverse population. We should use the diversity of Atlanta as a strength. The fact that we have so many bilingual people should be a strength to business people. We have the opportunity to grow up together, but we need to participate.
And do you have any fundraisers or events coming up?
Yeah, we do. We have a student success celebration in May, and we have a golf tournament. And we're also looking for folks that continually sponsor our students. We're working at basically, we spend $4 per day per student. Our kids are with us 250 days a year. We have 500 students. We're looking to grow to 4,000 students.
Wow.
So we need your help so that tomorrow's future will be brighter based on our investment of our students today.
And if people want to get in touch with you to find out how they can do that, how can they do that?
They can go to our website, cornersoutreach.org. They can go to us on Facebook. They can go to us on LinkedIn. We would love to have any information and anybody that wants to come work with us. We have volunteer opportunities, donor opportunities, sponsorship opportunities. We're very, very blessed to have so many children who have very, very bright futures. We need everyone to come together to make their opportunity be greater. And we need to do the same thing for their parents. The parents are working multiple jobs because their wages are so low. Most of us today struggle working 68 to 70 hours a week. I would struggle doing that. Our parents need the opportunity to have fair wages so they can work more of a normal job. They get to be dad and husband and do other things. I would say it's a great time for us to pull together to make that occur.
Wonderful. And Neil, if people want to find out more about Oconee State, how can they do that?
Sure. www.oconeestatebank.com is our website, or you could call 706-769-6611.
Very good. So I've been delighted to have you both on the show. Listeners, we've been talking to, pardon me, Neil Stevens, President and CEO of Oconee State Bank, and Larry Campbell, one of his longtime clients and Executive Director of Corners Outreach. It's been a great show. You've been listening to CEO Exclusive. I'm your host, Soyini Koch. I hope you have a profitable, productive, and very prosperous week. Thanks.
Thank you.
This show is brought to you by Anona Enterprises, where strategy is your access to money and performance. Learn more at Anona Enterprises.